Hey there, it's Veda. And if you've ever been the plain one in your family, the one they lean on but never really see, this story might feel a little too familiar. I was never the golden child, never the one who turned heads. But I built my life piece by piece quietly until I stood in a white dress at my own wedding, and my sister called me ugly in front of everyone. But here's the thing about being underestimated: it teaches you how to hold your ground. Let me tell you how I became the billionaire's bride, and how my sister paid the price for every word she never thought I'd remember. I've always known my place in the family. I wasn't the beautiful one, the charming one, or even the funny one. I was the solid one, the dependable fallback, the background sister. Every family has one, the person you lean on when life gets hard but forget to mention when things get good. For me, that role started early. I was the girl who blended in while my younger sister Leah shined. From the first grade talent show to the senior prom, Leah was always the star. And I was the audience, supportive, clapping, always standing a few steps behind. "You're lucky you're smart," my mother used to say with a wink when people complimented Leah's looks. It was her version of affection, a reminder that beauty wasn't my lane. That lane belonged to Leah. But beauty fades. That was something I learned the hard way. What doesn't fade is the sting of knowing your worth is only measured by what you can offer. And I offered a lot. When Leah struggled through college, bouncing between majors, scraping by on part-time jobs, it was me who picked up the pieces. I co-signed her lease when she couldn't get approved. I covered the tuition gaps when her financial aid ran out. No thank yous. Just a pat on the back from my parents who called it family helping family. I told myself it didn't bother me. I had built my own life. I was running my own consulting business. Modest but steady. I didn't need validation from anyone. Or so I thought. That belief wavered the day I introduced Ethan to my family. Ethan, my soon-to-be husband, the man who saw me before anyone else ever did. A tech entrepreneur, successful beyond anything I'd imagined, but humble, grounded. We met at a conference. He sat next to me in a breakout session and asked me a question about business strategy. We never stopped talking. When I brought him home for dinner, I could see it in their eyes. The shift, the way my mother's gaze sharpened, how Leah's smile stretched a little too wide. They weren't prepared for me to be with someone like him, and I knew, deep down, that this wasn't going to be the fairy tale they'd expected. After dessert, Leah leaned in with that practiced grin. "So, Ethan, what exactly do you see in my sister?" Her tone was light, playful, but there was a sharpness beneath it. I felt it, and so did Ethan. He smiled ever so slightly and replied, "I see brilliance. I see a woman who's built her own life from the ground up. I see strength." Leah laughed, too loud, too forced. "Of course. Brains over beauty, right?" It hung there, like smoke in the room. No one said anything, not even my parents. I smiled and brushed it off that night, but the cracks were already forming. Months later, as wedding planning began, the old dynamics came roaring back. Leah took the lead, naturally. She called herself my maid of honor, though I never officially asked. She arranged dress appointments, chose the color scheme, even insisted on reviewing the guest list. "You don't want to overdo it, Veda," she said at the bridal boutique, flipping through swatches. "Simple is better on you." I bit my tongue. Simple, the way she always described me. Like anything more would be pretending to be someone I wasn't. At the fitting, she stood behind me, watching as I turned in the mirror. "Maybe off-white," she suggested. "White's kind of harsh. Ivory softens everything." Softens, hides, masks. I didn't argue. I let her steer. Because it wasn't the time to fight. Not yet. But inside, something stirred. A small, growing refusal to keep playing the same role. Ever felt like the person they expect you to be isn't who you've become? Wedding planning is supposed to be a time of joy, right? That's what they tell you anyway. A whirlwind of tastings, fittings, and flower arrangements. But no one warns you about the quiet wars that happen beneath the surface. The little comments. The subtle power plays. With Leah, everything was a negotiation I hadn't agreed to. She made herself indispensable. She called every day with updates I never asked for. "I spoke to the florist today. They really shouldn't do roses. They're too overwhelming for you." Or, "I've booked us for dress fittings at this boutique I know. Trust me, you'll thank me." always with that syrupy tone that made questioning her feel like biting the hand that fed you. I let it slide at first, let her play the doting sister, the self-appointed maid of honor, because on some level I still believed this was her way of showing love. But love doesn't twist. At the second fitting, I stood in front of the mirror, dressed in a simple satin gown Leah had pushed for. She circled me like a shark in calm waters, eyeing every seam. "Turn a little," she said, waving her hand absently. I shifted under her gaze, her lips pressed into a thin line. "See, this is why I said no to the sweetheart neckline. Too much focus here." She gestured vaguely toward my chest. "We need something more modest. It's better for your shape." I swallowed hard, my reflection flickering beneath the weight of her words. Ethan wasn't there. He never came to the fittings. He wanted the dress to be a surprise, but I wondered if he would have recognized the tightening in my shoulders, the way Leah's voice never raised but always pressed. "I like this neckline," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. Leah's eyebrows lifted, just a flicker. "Of course you do. I mean, it's your day. I just want you to look comfortable." Comfortable. Another word she wielded like a dagger in soft velvet. I stared at myself in the mirror, tried to see what she saw. A woman too bold for the dress she wore, too plain to carry it off. But the longer I looked, the more I saw something else. A woman holding herself upright despite every push to fold. "I think I'll keep it," I said, turning back to the attendant. "We'll stick with the sweetheart." Leah didn't argue. She smiled, but it was thin, tight, like the first crack in a dam. Later that week, I found myself at a dinner with my parents, Leah, and her boyfriend Caleb. It wasn't a formal affair, just takeout boxes on the dining room table, wine glasses clinking softly. Ethan was out of town for work, which left me to fend for myself. I didn't mind. I'd spent most of my life navigating these waters. "So," Caleb said, leaning back in his chair, "I hear you and Ethan are skipping the prenup?" I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. My parents glanced at each other, then down at their plates. Leah's smile widened. "I just mentioned it the other day, as a precaution. It's normal, really." "Normal?" I echoed, setting my fork down gently. "For whom?" Leah shrugged, twirling her wineglass. "For people with that much money. I mean, Ethan's net worth is what? 9 figures? It's smart to be prepared." Prepared. Like I was a risk. Like I was the one bringing chaos to the table. "I'm not here for Ethan's money," I said, steady. Caleb laughed, a sharp sound. "No one thinks that." But the room disagreed. In the quiet glance my mother cast toward Leah, in the way Leah leaned in, softly, like this was just another sisterly conversation. "Of course not," Leah added, voice soft as silk. "We just want to make sure you're protected too." Protected. As if I was fragile. As if Ethan was a storm about to roll through and leave me in ruins. "I think Ethan and I can figure out what we need," I said, the words sitting between us like a stone in water. Leah sipped her wine. "Of course, I just want what's best for you." But her eyes said otherwise. "They said I know better. They said you're not ready for this life." I left early that night, the taste of dinner sour on my tongue. 2 days later, my phone buzzed. A message from Leah. "Just wanted to check in. Have you thought any more about the prenup? I found a really good lawyer if you want a recommendation." The smiley face twisted something inside me. I didn't respond. Ever felt like someone wrapped their criticism in concern? How did you handle it? There's a strange clarity that comes when someone tries to paint you into a corner. Suddenly, all the little brushes they've been using for years, soft comments, offhand jabs, carefully placed doubts, start to feel sharp against your skin. But the worst part isn't the cutting. It's that for so long you believed the portrait they painted. I'd almost let Leah convince me I wasn't built for this, that standing beside a man like Ethan meant I had to apologize for who I was, for not being polished enough, thin enough, graceful enough. But Ethan never asked for any of that, and maybe that's why Leah couldn't stand him. 2 weeks before the wedding, Ethan and I hosted a small dinner at his apartment, just the immediate family. It was supposed to be casual, a chance to bring everyone together before the big day. I should have known better. Leah arrived late, her entrance perfectly timed, sliding into the room with her boyfriend Caleb in tow. She wore a sleek black dress that probably cost more than my entire outfit. Her smile was effortless, her eyes sharp. "Sorry we're late," she said breezily, air kissing my mother, then my father. Traffic was insane. Ethan stood, offering her a drink. She waved it off, placing her hand on the back of my chair instead. "You've got a great view here," she said, glancing out at the city skyline. "A little cold, though." It was always like that with Leah. Compliment, then cut, smile, then sting. Dinner passed in fits and starts. Polite conversation, too many pauses. My parents were careful, treading water between me and Leah. Ethan tried to keep the energy light, but even he couldn't hold back the undercurrent running beneath the table. And then it happened. We were midway through dessert when Caleb leaned back, gesturing toward Ethan. "So, Ethan," he said, his voice easy, like we were all old friends. "When did you know you wanted to settle down?" Ethan smiled. "Pretty early on, actually. Veda impressed me from the start." Leah tilted her head, smiling like a cat who'd cornered a bird. "Was it her work ethic?" she asked, feigning innocence, "or the way she orders her coffee?" There it was. The slip, the opening. Ethan kept his smile. "It was the way she sees people, all of them, not just what they can give her." Leah blinked just for a moment, but recovered quickly. "That's sweet. I mean, some people have to work harder at being noticed." The air shifted. Ethan's hand tightened slightly on mine beneath the table. I looked at Leah, my voice steady. "Funny. I never had to work hard to notice when you needed rent money." She froze. The silence was palpable. Caleb coughed awkwardly, my father shifted in his seat, and my mother stared down at her plate like it held all the answers. Ethan leaned forward, breaking the tension. "I think Veda's always known how to see what matters." Leah laughed, but it cracked at the edges. "Well, thank goodness love is blind, right?" It was a soft jab, but I felt the tip of the blade. Later that night, as Ethan and I cleaned up, I stood by the window, staring out at the city lights. "I'm sorry," I said softly. Ethan dried a plate, setting it on the rack. "For what?" "For tonight. For all of it." He walked over, resting a hand on my shoulder. "You don't owe me an apology for how they treat you." I turned to him, meeting his eyes. Sometimes I wonder if they're right." His gaze didn't waver. "About what?" I swallowed hard. "About me, about not belonging in this world." Ethan cupped my face gently, his thumb tracing my cheek. "You belong exactly where you are, with me, and I will never let you forget that." I believed him, but believing myself, that was still a battle. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A message from Leah. "Last night was awkward. Maybe take some time to think about how you come across to people. You know I only want you to look your best." There was no emoji this time, just that polished concern that felt more like control. I stared at the screen for a long while before deleting the message. Have you ever stood up for yourself, only to second-guess everything afterward? The final fitting was supposed to be the one moment I had all to myself. Just me, the dress, and the quiet hum of anticipation before the chaos of the big day. But somehow, Leah had invited herself along. "You know I wouldn't miss this," she said, breezing into the boutique, latte in hand, wearing her tailored blazer like she owned the place. "It's tradition." I didn't remember that tradition. I remembered standing alone at her fitting, watching her parade in gown after gown while I sat silently, nodding at all the right moments. The attendant helped me step into the dress, smoothing the satin along my waist. The sweetheart neckline held firm, a small win I'd held onto from our last battle, but Leah stood behind me, arms crossed, lips pursed like she was studying a project that needed fixing. "Turn," she instructed, circling me as I obeyed, feeling more mannequin than bride. "You know," she began, sipping her latte, "the cut's nice, it draws attention up. But have you thought about your hair? Maybe an updo would elongate your neck a little, add some balance." I caught my reflection, my face soft, my shoulders tense. This wasn't about the dress or the hair. This was about reminding me that no matter how far I'd come, Leah still believed I needed her guidance. "I have a stylist," I replied, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "She knows what works for me." Leah smiled, cool and composed. "Of course. I just want you to feel elevated." elevated, like I wasn't enough to begin with. The final days before the wedding felt like a test I hadn't studied for. Every interaction with Leah carried weight, as though she were waiting for the perfect moment to remind me of my place. 2 days before the ceremony, at the rehearsal dinner, that moment came. The restaurant buzzed with soft laughter, silverware clinking against china. Our close friends, family, and a few of Ethan's colleagues gathered around the long table, wine flowing easily. I tried to sink into the warmth of the evening, letting the toasts and stories carry me. But Leah waited. She waited until the dessert plates were cleared and the wine glasses refilled, until the laughter softened and the room felt just intimate enough. She stood, lifting her glass. "To my sister," she began, smiling that wide, easy smile that charmed rooms. "I've watched her grow into the woman she is today, steadfast, reliable, smart." The words felt practiced, like something she'd rehearsed, and while some of us bloom late, her eyes flicked toward me. They still find their way. A few polite chuckles echoed around the table. I held my breath. "And let's be honest," Leah continued, her voice playful but sharp. "None of us expected Veda to land someone like Ethan." She winked at him, drawing more awkward laughter. Ethan's smile was thin. His hand found mine under the table, grounding me. But Leah wasn't finished. "I mean, love really is blind, right?" Silence. I felt the heat rise to my cheeks, the weight of every memory, every moment she'd pushed me down beneath her words. I stood slowly, my chair scraping the floor, the sound sharp against the hush. "Thank you, Leah," I said, lifting my glass, my voice steady, "for reminding me that no matter how far I've come, you'll always be there to pull me back." Leah blinked, her smile faltering. I turned to the room. "But here's the thing, I've stopped letting you." I clinked my glass to Ethan's, then sat back down, feeling my heart hammer in my chest. Ethan leaned in, whispering, "I've never loved you more." Leah sat, her smile gone. Later that night, my phone buzzed, a text from Leah. "You embarrassed me tonight, that wasn't necessary." I stared at it for a long time before typing back. "Neither was your toast." Ever had someone disguise cruelty as humor? How did you handle it? They say your wedding day is supposed to be the happiest day of your life. But that morning, standing in front of the mirror in my suite, something heavy settled beneath my ribcage. A weight that wasn't nerves, but the familiar ache of waiting for the other shoe to drop. The dress fit perfectly, the sweetheart neckline I'd fought for, the silk flowing just the way I'd imagined. And for a brief moment, as I traced my reflection, I felt beautiful, not just enough, more. Then the door creaked open. Leah stepped inside without knocking, already dressed in her silver-gray bridesmaid gown, her hair cascading in soft waves. She looked perfect, as always, the picture of effortless grace. "Wow," she said, taking me in from head to toe. "I'm impressed." I turned toward her, unsure whether to accept that as a compliment or brace for the sting. She smiled. "Seriously, I didn't think the sweetheart neckline would work, but you pulled it off." A pause. "Well, mostly." There it was, the needle beneath the silk. "Thanks, Leah," I said, my voice steady. I turned back to the mirror, refusing to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. She stepped closer, adjusting a loose strand of my hair, uninvited. "You know, a loose updo would have elongated your neck, balanced your features a bit." I caught her wrist gently, lowering her hand. "I like it the way it is." Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes tightened. "Of course, it's your day." She left then, the door clicking softly behind her, but the weight stayed. The ceremony was a blur of warmth and light. Ethan's eyes locked on mine as I walked down the aisle, every step grounding me in the life we were building together. His vows held me steady, filled with quiet promises that wrapped around my heart like silk. For a while, I forgot Leah even existed. The reception, though, that's where everything cracked wide open. The ballroom shimmered with soft candlelight, laughter weaving through the air as glasses clinked, plates scraped clean, and music hummed beneath the chatter. Ethan and I made our rounds, greeting friends, thanking family, the kind of joy that feels fragile because you know it can't last forever. Then came the speeches. Ethan's best man spoke first, funny, heartfelt, exactly what you'd expect. My father followed, stumbling through a few anecdotes about childhood mischief and how proud he was. And then Leah stood. She didn't need a microphone. Her voice carried effortlessly. For those of you who don't know, I'm Leah, Veda's sister, and I've had the honor of knowing her since the day she was born. Polite laughter, a few smiles. Growing up, we always joked that I was the beauty and she was the brains. Another pause. But today, looking at her, I realize I was wrong. She's beautiful in her own way. There was a flicker of something genuine in her eyes, and for one fragile moment, I almost believed it. But let's be honest, she continued. We all know love is blind. Silence. I mean, Ethan, you must have quite the imagination. She laughed lightly, encouraging the room to follow. A few nervous chuckles broke out, some guests shifting uncomfortably in their seats. My heart pounded. The heat crept up my neck, into my ears. The weight beneath my ribcage turned sharp. Ethan's jaw tightened, his hand slipping into mine beneath the table, anchoring me. But Leah wasn't finished. But that's what I love about you, sis. You've always known how to rise above expectations, to take what life gives you and make the best of it. The room exhaled, relieved, ready to move on. But I wasn't. I stood, my chair scraping back against the polished floor. The entire ballroom turned toward me, a hush spreading like wildfire. I lifted my glass. Thank you, Leah, for reminding me that no matter how far I've come, there's always someone trying to pull me back. Her eyes widened, but I didn't stop. For those of you who don't know, Leah's always been the one who shines. The beauty, the star. And I've been happy to stand in the shadows. I paused, my gaze sweeping the room. But today isn't about standing behind anyone. I turned to Ethan, my voice softening. It's about standing beside the man I love, the man who saw me before anyone else did. The room held its breath. So here's to love, real love, the kind that sees you, all of you, and stays. I raised my glass. Cheers. The applause came slow, hesitant, but then grew, echoing through the hall. Ethan rose, pulling me into a kiss that felt like a promise. Leah sat down, her smile gone. Later that evening, as the music swirled and the guests danced, Leah found me near the bar. Her smile was tight, brittle. That was quite the speech, she said. I sipped my champagne. So was yours. Her eyes narrowed. You didn't have to humiliate me. I met her gaze steady. Neither did you. She opened her mouth to respond, but Ethan appeared at my side, his hand on my back, anchoring me again. Everything okay here? He asked, calm but firm. Leah's smile flickered back into place. Of course, just sisterly love. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. But the weight in my chest lifted. For the first time, I wasn't the one shrinking to fit the room. The morning after the wedding felt different. The weight that had lived in my chest for so long, the heaviness of shrinking, of biting my tongue, had shifted. It wasn't gone, but it had loosened its grip. Ethan and I had breakfast quietly, the sun streaming through the windows of our suite, casting soft light on the remnants of wedding gifts and leftover champagne. He poured me coffee, brushing his fingers over my knuckles as he set the cup down. How do you feel? He asked. I wrapped my hands around the warmth of the mug. Lighter. A pause. But not finished. His eyes softened. Whatever you need, I'm here. And I knew he meant it. 2 days later, Leah sent a message. I almost laughed when I saw her name flash across the screen. I think we got off on the wrong foot at the wedding. It wasn't meant to come out like that. Maybe we can talk. For a moment, I stared at the words, feeling the pull of old habits, the instinct to smooth things over, to make it easier for everyone but me. I put the phone down and didn't respond, but Ethan had other news. We sat together in his office, the walls lined with books and soft leather chairs, the scent of cedar and coffee filling the air. He scrolled through emails on his laptop, then turned to me. I wanted to tell you this after the honeymoon, but... He hesitated, and that alone made me sit up straighter. Ethan didn't hesitate. The company Caleb works for, Leah's boyfriend, we were in talks to collaborate on a project. It's been in the works for months. I blinked, unsure where this was going. I've decided to pull out, he said simply. The way they handled things, the optics, the ethics, it doesn't sit right with me. I leaned back, trying to process. But that affects Leah, doesn't it? Ethan nodded. Caleb's tied to the deal. It's not personal, it's business. But it's going to hit them hard. For a moment, I felt the old guilt stirring. The part of me that wanted to rescue, to shield, but I remembered Leah's voice echoing through the reception hall. Love is blind. I looked Ethan in the eyes. Thank you. He reached for my hand. She played a game and lost. You're not responsible for cleaning up her mess. 3 days later, the fallout began. Leah's name lit up my phone again, this time with a different kind of message. You need to talk to Ethan. Caleb's losing the deal. This is going to destroy his company. You can't let this happen. The desperation leaked through every word. I set the phone down, not even tempted to respond, but she didn't stop. This isn't fair, Veda. Whatever issues we have, don't drag Caleb into it. The irony nearly made me laugh, as if she hadn't dragged me into the fire again and again. My mother called next. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. Veda, she began, her voice tight. I don't know what's going on between you and your sister, but she's upset. You know how hard things have been for her and Caleb. They don't deserve this. I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. Neither did I, Mom. She sighed heavily. This isn't the time to hold grudges. I laughed, but it wasn't warm. Grudges or boundaries. A pause. Family is family. Family doesn't get to humiliate me at my own wedding and expect nothing to change. There was silence on the other end. And then softly, You're not the same girl we raised. No, I said, my voice steady. I'm not. I hung up before she could say more. That evening, I sat down at my desk, opened an old notebook, and flipped through pages of payments, records. Every time I'd bailed Leah out, her tuition gaps, her rent, the credit card debt she pretended didn't exist, I tallied the numbers. I wrote them down neatly. And then I drafted an email. Leah, attached, is a record of the financial support I've provided over the years. I expect repayment in full within 6 months, or we can part ways cleanly. I didn't soften it. I didn't add an apology or explanation. It was time she stood on her own. Her response came 2 days later. You're really doing this? After everything? I didn't reply. The final message she sent was shorter. I never thought you'd turn your back on me. I stared at those words, feeling the twist of old guilt, the echo of being the plain sister who was supposed to hold everything together. But I breathed through it. When did you realize holding your ground was the most loving thing you could do for yourself? The first week after cutting ties with Leah passed quietly, but something shifted beneath my skin. There was a strangeness to silence, the kind I wasn't used to. For so long, Leah's voice had been a constant, whether it came in the form of sly jabs, sweet apologies, or desperate pleas. Without her, the air felt still, peaceful, but not empty. Ethan and I postponed our honeymoon, not because we had to, but because I wanted to be in the moment, to process everything that had just unraveled, no rushing to tropical shores to bury it beneath champagne and sunsets. I needed to stand in this space I had carved out for myself and let it settle. One afternoon, as I sat on our balcony with the city stretching wide beneath me, I scrolled through my emails, most of them wedding congratulations from clients, old friends. But one subject line stopped me. I'm sorry. It was from Leah. I hesitated. The pull of curiosity and habit warred with my newfound resolve. Finally, I opened it. Veda, I know I've crossed so many lines. I don't expect forgiveness. But I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything, for the things I said, the things I didn't say. I guess I just got so used to being the one people noticed that I didn't know who I was when you started shining. I hope someday you can understand that. No excuses, no demands, just a soft crack in the armor. I sat with it for a while, letting the words settle. There was a time I would have jumped to reply, to soothe, to tell her it was okay, but I'd learned that okay wasn't the point. So I closed the email. I didn't reply. Some things don't need closure. They just need space. A few weeks later, Ethan and I attended a charity gala. Nothing too flashy, just a quiet event for a women's empowerment organization. I had donated before, but this time felt different. I wasn't just writing a check to feel useful. I was investing in something I believed in. We sat at a table near the front, listening to a young woman named Camila share her story. About leaving a toxic household, about starting over, about building something from nothing. Her voice didn't shake. She stood tall, the room holding its breath for her. Afterward, as we mingled, I found myself pulled into conversation with the director of the organization. She smiled warmly. You know, she said, we've been talking about creating a fund specifically for women starting over, for those who've been financially dependent on others for too long and need a bridge. The idea rooted itself in my chest. I nodded slowly. I want to help with that, I said. And I meant it. It wasn't about Leah. It wasn't even about me. Not really. It was about breaking the cycle that had kept me quiet for so long, the cycle that told me my worth was tied to how much I could give without asking for anything back. That night, Ethan squeezed my hand as we left. "Proud of you," he murmured. I smiled. "I'm proud of me too." Months passed. The fun launched quietly, but the ripples spread wider than I expected. Stories came in, women starting businesses, leaving harmful homes, reclaiming their own narratives. It wasn't grand. It wasn't flashy, but it mattered. Leah never reached out again. I didn't need her to. One evening, standing again on that same balcony, the city humming beneath me, I took a breath deeper than I'd taken in years. I wasn't the plain duckling anymore. I wasn't the fixer or the shadow. I was the woman Ethan loved. I was the woman I loved. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's reclaiming your own story. How would you rewrite yours?